Previously, in the anime, Rishma's family, House of Brittany refused to help the French army in the war, so in anger Charlotte spoke that House of Brittany were always like this, backstabber. And Rishma's mother is the prime example, because just as her father died she ran off and married the English king. So Rishma got angry hearing those words and left her position as the general. More so what really broke her was that Montmorency was in love with Jeanne. So Montmorency took the position of the general and the first decision he made was to secure Orleans land. So he led all the few troops to Orleans, but there a black Ulysses showed up with an archer who uses holy crossbow. That black Ulysses pins down Jeanne and sacrifices herself to kill Jeanne. And then, that bowman literally took out the heart of black Ulysses and Jeanne with his arrow, and watching this Montmorency was so shocked that it made him fall unconscious. So when he woke up, he asked Ellen about Jeanne because he thought Jeanne just died. But he's not quite right. Ellen took him to Jeanne and Astroff explained that even though her heart was pulled out, she's barely alive because of the Philosopher's Stone, but there's a way to revive her by using the legendary sword Excalibur, and Montmorency was off to find the sword. But Ellen tells Montmorency that they need troops more than ever right now. They can't hope to fight the English army, but Montmorency could bring in reinforcements of at least 2,000 soldiers. But his grandfather won't lend him the soldiers and everyone knows it. So Ellen tells him to leave the sword to him and sent Montmorency to his home to convince his grandfather. But there's a maiden named Catherine who lives there and she's deeply in love with Montmorency, but his grandfather, John the Red-Beard, heard the news of Montmorency's return and his request for troops. So he got back home in a foul mood and told Montmorency that he could take as many soldiers as he wants, but he needs to fulfill the condition first. Montmorency got mad because he doesn't want to marry Catherine, but her family is extremely wealthy, even wealthier than the French royal family, but Catherine is Montmorency's cousin and so he refused. But he also paid the price by getting beaten up. Montmorency is against it and thinks Catherine also doesn't want to marry him. But actually Catherine does want to marry Montmorency and wants to bear his child. It was raining like that day too when Catherine arrived here for the first time. She had heard all the potential fiancé had passed away from depression when they were kidnapped and brought here. And John was after Catherine's inheritance and Montmorency didn't like it. And that night the food she ate were mixed with something, and she holds down Montmorency by force. But Montmorency promised Catherine that he'd be his big brother and take care of her, which calmed her down, and he always kept his promise. But Montmorency never wanted to marry Catherine and he was bent on it. This time Montmorency looked too serious, and once even John thought Montmorency could have killed him when he got to him to convince him. Then at night, Nicholas came to visit again. Nicholas had brought Montmorency to John because it was in the prophecy that the kid would become the embodiment of destruction. But John didn't believe in the prophecy, and Nicholas also wanted to believe on him, but John had promised that he'll make sure Montmorency would stay human. And the closest way to do so is by giving him a human lifestyle. And he will uphold that promise even now, and if he can't, then his silence gave the answer that John would kill Montmorency. This night John sent Montmorency to spend the night with Catherine. And there he confessed he loves Jeanne. She's all alone in this world, and he had made an oath to stay by her side, and John was observing through the night. And Montmorency came out of her room in the morning to take away the soldiers as he promised. At first it looked like he slept with Catherine but nothing happened in the whole night. They just pretended that they slept together because Catherine understood how much Montmorency loves Jeanne. So now that Montmorency had done his job, now it was Ellen and Astroff's turn to secure the Excalibur, but they are looking for the scabbard of Excalibur, not the actual blade. But the English army had started their attack once more on the fortress and Ellen and his team were taking a break at night, but suddenly the stones around them started to move forward. And Astroff remembered this was one of her traps she set up when she hid the scabbard, so she told Ellen to hold up the Philosopher's Stone and instantly those stones stopped. Then the fairies who guards the scabbard came out, and Astroff orders them to take her to the scabbard, but fairies didn't even recognize her at all, so after a long course of explanation, they realized Astroff was the fairy queen and led them to the scabbard, but there was already someone here who took the scabbard. She's the Princess of Wales and she's with the English army. And her reinforcements are coming here to get her, so she's planning to wait until then, but time was running out and they had no hope of reviving Jeanne without scabbard. So Astroff told Tard to distract her, so Tard started to threaten the princess to come down or he would burn down the whole tree, but Princess saw through their scheme and shot down Astroff. Princess got happy that she saw through their plan, but a friendly advice, never celebrate too early, and Astroff is immortal, so that shock made her fall down. But the knights of the English army had arrived and Ellen asked Tar to take the scabbard and run away as he distracts the knights by taking the princess hostage. They had no other options so they ran off, and Ellen always wished to be recognized at least once, that he's just as good as Rishma in fight. And on the other side, Montmorency took off with the soldiers of 2000 and ran into Astrov. She gave him the good and the bad news about the situation, but their way got blocked by Lotriamel again. He is committing treason against the France by doing this, but Lotriamel wants to stop Montmorency because if he gets through they might defeat the English troops. And Lotriamel wants to get into an agreement with the English army to secure his place in French army, for that he has to stop Montmorency and provokes him by making fun of Jeanne's death. But there Ellen came out with a whole set of troops behind him, and they are the private regiment of Rishma, so when Ellen was near death, Rishma saved Ellen from the English army. She came here to stop the English army, but she never thought she would find Ellen here. That time he once again felt beaten and thought others would laugh at him. But Rishma told him she never once thought of laughing at him and acknowledges him, which made him happy, and so they got here to help Montmorency and holds off Lotriamel and his troops for Montmorency and his troops to leave. And thanks to that they arrived on time and everyone were making way for Montmorency to reach Jeanne, but right then Black Ulysses, also known as Philip, woke up from her death as well. Then Montmorency gave the scabbard to Jeanne, but she still needed the elixir to utilize the power, so Montmorency gave her some with the kiss which activated the power of the scabbard and it healed Jeanne, bringing her back from the brink of death. But now Philip was also ready to dive into the fight. But first, Jeanne showed up to the soldiers to raise their confidence, and then the party were planning their next move to attack the English army, but this time they chose to leave Jeanne behind. Because Jeanne has only half of the philosopher's stone, so the scabbard got into use for only once, meaning, if she dies again, even the scabbard's power would be useless. That is why they want to deal with this matter themselves, and they even got 2,000 soldiers as reinforcements, so there was nothing to worry about. But there the news came in that Black Ulysses is going on a rampage, just the mention of it and Jeanne ran off to fight her again. And Glasstail was on hold because he knew Jeanne would come out if Philip showed up, and Montmorency wanted to leave on his own to save Jeanne, but many of the troops and locals showed their support. And with their help Montmorency left to reach out to Jeanne, and all the troops and locals made a human wall and makes a way for Montmorency to get through, and at that time, Jeanne and Philip were going head to head on their fight, but Philip regrows any part Jeanne cuts down almost instantly, and to break down Jeanne, she tells her that Montmorency is likely to marry Catherine because that was the condition his grandfather set to get the 2,000 soldiers. That puts Jeanne into depression that Montmorency broke his promise that he would stay with her, and taking the chance Philip attacked Jeanne and she tried to counter her. But it was a clear provocation to trap Jeanne, and seeing this Glasstail took the shot with his holy arrow with so many different arrows to confuse Jeanne. So Montmorency swallowed the other half of the philosopher's stone and had the feeling that nothing would happen. With it, he gains the power to make air harder than steel, and Astrov's judgment on this was that Montmorency would die if he swallowed the stone because he creates elixir non-stop in his body, but she never would have guessed about this outcome if the stone was half. But there Philip holds down Jeanne again like last time, and Glasstail took the clear shot at them. Montmorency tried his best to stop it but failed and it hits the target. But the target was Philip's helmet, and Jeanne used this chance to break down her helmet even further. Their fight broke off the bridge and Philip fell down in the river. So Glasstail followed her to save her and that marked the victory of the French army. But something unexpected began to happen that not even Astrov could have imagined. This is what Nicholas feared because it is the end of the world. There Astrov saw that all dimensions are folding together, bringing down the end of the world. But sadly that is where our video comes to end. If you want to watch the last part then please tell me down in the comment section. Because I want to bring out only those animes that you all want to watch. And if you enjoyed the video, then please subscribe the channel and like the video. Till next time, take care.